Hello and welcome to another episode of Board Game Tutorials, and today we're going to go over Gaia Project. Now, Gaia Project is a 1 to 4 player game. It is competitive, and the player at the end of 6 rounds who has the most victory points will be the winner. This one can be a little bit lengthy, and there's a lot of confusing iconography for somebody who's new to the game. But I'll try to explain it the best I can. The game is nowhere near as complex as it looks. Once you get the hang of it, it's a lot of fun and has a lot of variety and some pretty deep strategy. But first, let's get to a little quick setup. Alright, so before we get into this game, let's go over just a few things. Number one, I've got this set up for a 2-player game. Now in a 1 or 2-player game, you have to set up neutral satellites on your scoring. Now what that means is, on every one of these final scoring tiles, you have a number in the bottom right. That number indicates where you place the neutral satellite for endgame scoring. Also, let's quickly go over power. There's a few different terms to learn for power, such as charge power. When you have a tile or an ability that tells you to charge power, that means you move 1 power from the lowest section you have power available and move it to the next one in order. If you have none in section 1, you can then charge power from 2 to 3. Another term to look for is spend power. You can only spend power from number 3 to number 1. Another term for power is discard. When asked or told to discard power, generally speaking, unless otherwise dictated, discarding can come from any one of your 3 areas. If you have to discard 2, you can discard 2 of the lowest numbers. And lastly is Gaia power. Now, all factions, when you go to the Gaia phase, are told to move the power from your Gaia section along that arrow to Area 1. If you're playing the Terrans, however, they are allowed to go to Area 2 instead. And the last thing we should go over is acquiring tech tiles. Notice how every row of research has a tech tile underneath it. And below those 2 is another tech tile. Anytime you acquire one of these tech tiles that are tied to one of the 6 research rows, you upgrade that research level. If you acquire the one that is underneath 2 rows, you get to choose which area you upgrade your level to. And lastly, the advanced tech tiles. In order to do an advanced tech tile, you have to be in at least level 4 or 5, one of the adjacent zones for this advanced tech tile that is tied specifically to this research line. If you are in level 4 or 5, and you have a green-faced Federation token, as well as own a standard tech tile, you may flip your green-faced Federation token to the gray side and replace the standard tech tile with the advanced tech tile. So during our playthrough of Gaia Project, we have 6 total rounds. Each round has its own randomly drawn and declared scoring. At the end of the game, we have 2 final scoring tiles. But there's only 4 phases per round. We have phase 1 is the income phase, phase 2 is the Gaia phase, phase 3 is actions, and phase 4 will be cleanup. Let's start off with income. During the income phase, any symbols that you have access to that show a hand with a resource over it means gain that resource. So let's go into greater detail on what we can gain from. First off, let's check our faction board. Now our mines will supply us ore. Not all mines will give you ore, however most of them will. You have one that is automatically available to you, and these 2 are available because we have built these mines. So this will supply us with 3 ore. Our institutes supply money, or in this case credits. Our academies supply knowledge. We can also check our round boosters. In this case, we gain 1 ore, and we get to add 2 more power to our 1 level. Also, if you have any tech tiles, those will also gain whatever is displayed on them. In this case, 4 credits. And lastly, make sure to check your research, because a couple of these will make sure to get you some resources. Now, after all players have adjusted their levels of resources and income, we can move on to the Gaia phase. Now, the Gaia phase is when you are gaining control of purple or trans-dim planets with a Gaia former. Now, during phase 2, the Gaia phase, we can move all of that power we spent back to level 1, and then we will place a green Gaia planet token underneath where the Gaia former is on the table. Now, since the orange faction has a Gaia former on that green Gaia planet, only the orange faction is allowed to build something there. Now, any green Gaia planet on the board with no Gaia former on it is fair game. However, that will cost you 1 QIC token in order to build there. Now, after the Gaia phase is complete, we move on to action phase. Now, hold out with me for a little bit because there are quite a few actions. But luckily, once you get used to the iconography of this game, we have a little card that reminds you of what all the actions are available to you. Let's go over them real quick. Now, our first action available to us is Build a Mine. Our cost is located next to our mines, and in this case is 2 credits, 1, 2, and 1 ore. And we'll take a mine from the leftmost position on the board, and we can place this on a planet that we have access and habitability with. To check habitability, you can look at the far right section of planets. In order to terraform, you can terraform the color of planet that your faction is for free, or you can spend ore to terraform 1, 2, or 3 times in order to gain colonization on the planets associated with that level of terraforming. So since we paid the Build a Mine cost, the orange faction can place a mine for free on any orange planet. But we first have to check accessibility. Now, accessibility goes based on our navigation. So at level 0 navigation, we only have access to 1 space away from our own colonized areas. So from this mine, we have to run a course 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zones away. That's a little too far. We only have 1 space away. So what we can do is spend one of our green QIC tokens to gain +2 space navigation. However, that again will not be enough. So let's start looking at planets that are a little closer. Following that chart on our faction board, I can see that it only costs 1 terraforming point to go to a red or a yellow planet. Well, lucky for Orange, they have a red planet directly next to a colony they already have. However, we now have to terraform this planet to be suitable for this faction. On your research board, wherever your level of research is located, it will tell you how much ore is required per level of terraforming. Now, since red and yellow planets are only 1 level of terraforming, that's going to cost Orange 3 ore. So we'll knock down our ore 1, 2, 3 spaces. And now we have access to this red planet. Now our second action is Gaia Project. So let's go into a little bit more greater detail for that. So to start a Gaia Project, we first have to pay the cost. We can refer to the purple Gaia Project research line on the research board that will tell us how much power is required to perform a Gaia project. But at level 1 and level 2, it'll be 6 power. Now when paying power for a Gaia project, we can pay from any position on the power chart. So we move 6 power to the Gaia project section on our faction board. Then we take one of our available Gaia formers. And remember, available Gaia formers are placed here. If it is not on the faction board, it is in the general supply. Now, once again, we have to check accessibility. We can only place a Gaia former on a purple planet that is within our area. So the shortest route to get from any of these to this purple planet would be 2. We don't have that in our navigation. We only have 1 space available. So again, this time let's say we will spend our QIC to advance our navigation by 2 spaces. Now we'll place that Gaia former directly on the purple planet. Remember, the purple planet does not become a green Gaia planet until phase 2, the Gaia phase. Next up, we have the upgrade action. Now when we make an upgrade, we refer to our faction board. Our faction board is pretty closely related to where they can upgrade to, such as the mine can upgrade to an institute can upgrade to a planetary institute, or to a research lab. And the research labs can upgrade to an academy. Now when you do an upgrade, you have to spend the required cost, and what you'll do is take the leftmost building from what you're upgrading and replace it with one of the available buildings on one of your planets. So we'll take this institute and replace a mine. Now that replaced mine will go to the rightmost position back to where it came from. All right, our next available action is form a federation. Now you'll notice that you have these purple power icons next to every one of your buildings. When you want to form a federation, you need adjacent or connected buildings that equal at least 7 power. Now what we can do to connect non-adjacent planets is this. During Form a Federation, you can perform the free action of spending or discarding 1 power. Now remember, discarding means permanently removing power from your board. And for every 1 power you discard, you can place a satellite adjacent to any planet you have colonized. In this case, it works out pretty well. We have all 4 of these buildings here, and a Gaia former here with no actual building on it, so that will be 0 power. Now we need at least 7 power. Our institutes are worth 2 power each, our research lab is worth 2 power, and a mine is worth 1 power. So by placing this satellite between these 3 planets here, and these 2 planets are adjacent to each other, we can officially form a federation. Now, what that means is we get to claim any of these 6 Federation tiles. Our fifth available action is research. If you perform the research action, you can spend 4 knowledge in order to upgrade the level of any one of your 6 research areas by 1 level. We have the science, economy, Gaia Project, artificial intelligence, navigation, and terraforming lines of research. Now, each research has its own benefits and its own bonuses, but if you ever see an icon surrounded by a white border with a little shimmering star, that means you gain that as a one-time bonus immediately. Next up is the power and QIC actions. Now, on the bottom of the research board, you'll notice these purple power actions and the green QIC actions. Now, they all have different values or actions to be taken, but in the top of the power actions, it'll show you a number of power tokens with a spend black arrow. So if you spend from your level 3 power to level 1 an a number equal to any of these available actions, you can gain whatever it is. In some cases, it's resources. In some cases, it's a free level or 2 levels of terraforming, or you can gain more power. But in order to do this, after spending your power, you place an action token on top of that zone to indicate that that action has already been spent. No other players can take it. Same thing with the QIC. You can spend 4 QIC to instantly gain a tech tile, and if you follow the proper rules for advanced tech tile, you can even gain one of those. Here you can score a Federation token again. So any token that you have in your faction area that you've already gained, you can score that token again. And this one, for 2 QIC, you gain 3 victory points immediately, and then 1 additional victory point for every different type of planet you have. Now, another type of action are special actions, such as this round booster. This round booster allows you to build a mine with 1 free level of terraforming. Once you perform this special action, we will cover it with an action token, symbolizing you've already taken it. Another available action to you is probably the last actual action, is pass, in which case you take your round marker and you put it back with the remaining round markers, round boosters. Select a new round booster. You'll gain it and place it face down in your faction area. And if you are the first player to perform pass during this action phase, you will also gain the first player marker, so that next round you will be the first player to act. Now, we also have a list of free actions that are available to you, which are listed on your faction board to the far right. If you spend the amount of power listed, you can gain whatever the arrows point to. These can only be played during your turn and cannot be played after you've passed. Now let's cover one of the more important parts of the game: neighboring and passive power charge. Now, neighboring means within 2 spaces of an opponent's area. So let's cover passive power charging. Now, on your section of your faction board, every building has a specified power on it. Now, the rule is, if another player builds within 2 spaces of you, you get to passively use their turn to charge your power. Now, based on the power that is listed on that building, such as a mine is only 1, you can charge that much power, but you have to pay for it with victory points. Now, the overall cost is 1 fewer victory point than the amount of power you're charging. So charging 1 power costs 0, 2 will cost you 1, 3 will cost 2, and 4 will cost 3. Now here's the catch. You can either charge it all and spend that victory points, or charge none of it. You cannot choose to charge less and spend less. It has to be the full value of that building. Unless you do not have enough power to charge to make up the requirement of that charge, you can then spend less. This was one of the harder parts of the game for me to learn. It got a little confusing, but playing around with it, you get used to it. There is one aspect of the passive charge, though. As the person building or upgrading, you have to, as part of the rule book, you have to let them know. Now that's all of the actions that are available. I know there's a lot, and I know it gets a little confusing and chaotic, but remember, your card will show you in iconography form all of the actions available to you. The back of your rule book will tell you generally what most of those icons and symbols mean. Your free actions are on your player board. Your power and QIC actions are also on the research board. So all of your available actions are pretty much in front of you. It's just learning how to decode and decrypt what the icons mean. But after all of your actions are done and all players have passed, we move on to the fourth and final phase, cleanup. During cleanup, any action tokens that were played will be removed so that later actions can be used. All of your round boosters now get flipped to the face-up side, and whatever the current round's scoring is will be removed from the scoreboard completely. We can no longer use this to score. Now, every round has its own unique scoring, and you'll always be on the round of the lowest number that is visible. Now, once you perform this action during your turn, you gain this many points. Don't really pay attention to the top. That's for solo/automa play. If you have an NPC player being controlled by a deck of cards, that top part of the scoring takes effect for them. But this here means anytime you advance a research level, you gain 2 victory points. At the end of the round, that'll get removed, or you could also just flip it around. And then the next round will be the next scoring. Now down here, we also have a stack of final scoring tiles. In this game, I randomly chose. This one means for every segment of the game board. In a 2-player game, there are 7. But for every time I build in a new section of space, I will advance 1 spot. This one here is for Gaia planets. For every Gaia planet I have colonized, I will advance that 1 spot. And since I'm playing a 2-player game, I have a neutral satellite as indicated by the number on each final scoring. Now what that means is it's competition for final scoring, because whatever player is in first place gains 18 victory points. Second place gets 12. Third place will get 6. And in a 4-player game, if there's a 4th place, you get 0. So after scoring your final score at the end of the game, you score the 2 final scoring tiles, and then you go into research. As indicated as a reminder, right here, for any research level you are 3, 4, or 5 in, you get 4 victory points. And that is cumulative. So you'll score every individual level, like 3, 4, and 5, for 4 points. So if the orange player has a level 5 science, that's 4, 8, 12 victory points for science alone. And we'll go for every player in every research lane. Now, there can only ever be one player per level 5. Once one player has researched a level 5, no other player can get there. Once one player has taken an advanced tech tile from that, no other player can get that advanced tech tile. No player can ever have more than one of the same standard tech tile, but they could eventually own all of them if they can, if they have the knowledge to get there. And then the final way of scoring is right here. For any combination of 3 ore, credits, and knowledge, you gain 1 additional victory point. In summary, you check out your final scoring, add that to your round bonus on the board, or your victory point track on the board. Then you'll check out your research and score for research. And then you'll score for any remaining 3 count of ore, credits, and knowledge. And it can be any combination of those 3. But if you have, after those, whoever has the highest amount of victory points is considered the winner. Congratulations. But those are the basics of Gaia Project. It's this game is new to me. I've only played it one other time. And like I said, it can be confusing. There's a lot of symbols and icons to learn, but do not be discouraged. This game is phenomenal. You've got the space exploration and colonization. It's got a lot of randomness involved because your tech tiles will be in a randomly chosen space every game. You could have different final scoring, round boosters. There's a large stack of round boosters, but you only have randomly selected 1 per player plus 3. So you could get different round boosters. Based on the number of players, the map will change. But yeah, there's so much strategy and randomness involved in this game. No 2 games will ever be the same. I really enjoyed this game, and I really hope you all do too. Have a good night.